Heyo, welcome everyone to episode 26 of Today in the Scene. I'm Joe with Indie Arcade Wave, and this week we're going to be jumping into I guess unique is one way to say it, a very unique fighting game that actually has too many buttons for me to count. I honestly don't even know how many buttons it is. I'm assuming it's 100. But we're speaking with the creator today, Amanda Hudgins. How are you doing today, Amanda?
I'm doing all right. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, we've been talking a little while about getting this interview set up, and I'm really glad you were finally able to make it and everything lined up for us. Um, let's just jump right in and go into who you are and what you do.
Okay. So, as you said, my name is Amanda Hudgins. I'm a game designer and sort of maker of things is probably a good generic way of putting it. And I make a bunch of different sort of art installations and projects and game development things out of central Kentucky specifically. And the project I'm best known for is Centenntable, which is also known as the Thousand Button Project, but it was originally called the Thousand Button Project and is now called Centenntable. And I also did another installation that Kotaku wrote about last year where you smash guitars on a stage, like actual acoustic guitars,
Interesting.
called One Night Only. But yeah, that's me. I like large maximalist game design that doesn't make any sense. And then I actually work for a game studio in Kentucky that works in a bunch of different games called Super Soul. But yeah,
Okay.
that's me.
So it sounds like you're in the game development zone, and I know there's a bunch of other stuff you do as well. Take
Yes.
me into Centennial a little bit. How did this project start?
Well, Kentucky has a decent sized game development scene, but specifically we have a thriving alternative controls scene. And alternative controls is a specific sort of niche subsection of game development specifically targeted at unconventional controllers. And so a couple of years ago, we partnered with a local children's museum, for lack of a better word, called the Living Arts and Science Center in downtown Lexington, Kentucky. And we run a 2 month art show. We've done it every year except for this one, obviously. Uh, we do it every year, and we basically run a two month art show at their gallery. And uh, what happened is I wanted to make a fighting game that had too many buttons. Basically, I wanted to get that feeling of when you're like 8 and you go over to your cousin's house for the first time and they have Mortal Kombat and your parents wouldn't allow you to get fighting games, so you don't know how to play and it feels like the controller has too many buttons. I wanted to have that feeling, but on the largest possible scale. And
So
so
you
that
wanted to
was
go for
Centennial.
a button masher, basically.
It is a button masher in the purest possible sense.
I mean, that's how I feel about a lot of fighting games. I'm not good at them, and I'm not going to hesitate to admit that.
Oh no, I'm
Uh,
terrible at them.
I am always the person that just low kick, low kick, low kick, low kick, low kick.
Um,
It's easier to just spam one button over and over.
Specifically for me, there's a character in totally forgot the game because that's how out of the scene I am. There's a character called Keelik. I think it's in Soul Calibur,
Yeah, it's
and
Soul Calibur. I played him a lot.
Keelik has a staff, and you can
Yep.
just like same button, and you can just like poke people in the face with it, and it's perfect. It's the only character I played, and I'm that kind of character. I'm that kind of player. And it's really funny because I've now shown this game everywhere, and people are always like, "Oh, you must be such a big fan of fighting games." I'm not. Like I have no knowledge of fighting games at all.
That's funny. I He's like the only character I really played in that too, other than maybe Nightmare. And I'm not big into fighting games either, but yours really caught my attention. And I know you worked with Mark and the guys over at Death by Audio,
Yeah.
who we've spoken to. Um, I want to talk about the cabinet design in a little bit here. Can you take me through how you made the game and what is the goal of the game? Like, how does a normal game unfold?
Well, So I would say that the first part of the game was really the controller. And so the controller itself it's actually an IKEA children's table. Uh, it's just a big coffee table looking thing, and it has 100 buttons. I hand drilled them. I do not recommend that. Uh, and then it's epoxied on the top, and it's got 100 buttons in it. And I had that mental image in my head of I wanted something with too many buttons in it. And then from there, it was like, oh, what's the game going to be? And we had a bunch of different ideas of like, oh, if what if you pressed a button and then it was a different game every time? And then the logical thing was, no, what if each person gets 50 buttons and each button does a different thing, but it does a different thing every round? So, for example, the top left button in round one will be a punch this round, but the next round it could change your fighter into a different color, or it could alter the mix for the audio, or it could drop a cardboard box on your head. And those are all actual things that the game will do. And those are all options. There are, I think, 88 possible combinations for 50 buttons, and it'll randomly mix them in. And so that's the basic gist of it. And there are 3 rounds. And the idea is ideally you should get you should get to 3 rounds. Like one person should win one, another person should win the other one. It's best 2 of 3, basically. And so you should hit 3 rounds. We don't want someone to only play 2 rounds because that doesn't feel right. You want that sensation of, oh gosh, I'm going to win, or I have a chance at winning. You want that feeling. And honestly, I've played this game probably 1,000 times, and you get it more often than not. It's a very difficult game to master because it's random. It's truly random. It's random every time.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really master combinations if the buttons change on you every single time and you don't know where they are. Um, you said that it came from an IKEA table, is where you built the original 100 button system.
Yes.
Can you take me through the step of like your prototypes all the way up to working with Death by Audio? Like, what were your
Yeah.
different iterations and what kind of different cabinets do you have?
Let's see. The very first one was built out of a cedar coffee table. It had 16 buttons. Because when I told my partner that I wanted to build 1,000 buttons, because it was going to be 1,000, that was my first idea. Was I wanted
That
to.
is so many buttons.
I still want to build one with 1,000, but it's going to be like a mech game. Like that's my ultimate goal. I think it would be great, but separate conversation. But because I'm now the button person, that's like my thing. People have sent me buttons. Side note, uh, the so the first one was like a cedar chest because my partner was like, "You've never actually built anything with buttons before," because I hadn't. So I built a little 16 button fight stick, and we hooked it up to I think Killer Instinct, and made like a 16 button randomized fighter. And then I built the 100 button Centenntable, the one that's toured everywhere in the continental U.S. The primary board, that one's built out of an IKEA table, and then I bought another IKEA tabletop and cut that puppy in half, and so it folds in half, and that actually doesn't it has 100 buttons now. It only had 88 for a while. That's Centenntable Championship Edition. That one folds up and goes into a suitcase, and that one is the one I take internationally or anywhere where I have to travel on a plane or on a uh, like on a train. Like when I did Train Jam, I built that was the original reason I built that board, actually. So that guy folds up. There's actually a video on YouTube of me disassembling and reassembling the board. It takes about 5 minutes. And then in, oh God, I would say 2019, I was in the chat with Wonderville because I'm in their like I'm in their like their Slack, and they were like talking about what game they wanted to make for, because every year they make a new game for Magfest. They build a new arcade cabinet, and I was like, well, if y'all weren't a bunch of cowards, you'd build mine.
Oh, you called him out.
I was kidding, because I was because like it's a pain, it's a real pain in the ass, honestly. Like, because I've now built this thing so many times, and like I've disassembled and reassembled it, and I was kidding, 100%. I was kidding, because like it's 100 buttons, and I knew it was going to be a pain, and I really didn't think that they were going to do it. And then I think it was Mark contacted me like a week later, and he was like, "I think we're going to do it," and I was like, "Really?" Because I think that they contacted me in like November. It was really close. And like again, I've built this thing a bunch of times, so I was really surprised that they were like it was really tight schedule, but they built it. And they finished the assembly at Magfest of this year. And now it's at Wonderville. If you can go to New York during a pandemic and play it. I haven't actually played it, the arcade version, but I had someone tell me on Instagram that it was their favorite game at Wonderville, which was very high praise, which is really cool because there are some really amazing games at Wonderville. But it's a lovely little cabinet they've built. They hired an artist who I think just happened to, like, I can't remember her name, but I think it's a she. Like, she happened to be in the building. They were just like, oh, because I draw and I paint on all of my boards to give them like this, to give them each a certain amount of style. And they're like, oh, we want to copy that. We want to like do something. And obviously I can't like paint on it because they're in New York and I'm in Kentucky. And so they hired someone to do it, and they did a really great job. It looks way more professional than any of mine.
Yeah, the
And
board is really cool.
it's really lovely. And theirs is also like foldable and transportable, and which is really handy.
Yeah, so you've mentioned a handful of times, and the guys over there are awesome. They build great cabinets. You're right. There are a ton of games in Wonderville, and
Mm-hmm.
the cool thing about it is they're all indies. But I know when you said that, they definitely picked it up as a challenge because they sent me all their work. They sent me like an 800-page folder, and it
Yep.
had like they made an arcade cabinet in the shape of a wedding cake. Like,
Yep.
it seems like they'll take on anything.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering about your game and where you've taken it. You mentioned that you've gone international and on a train tour. Can you walk me through some of those conventions and what they were like?
Oh yeah. So let's see. Oh gosh. So the very first place I took it was Bit Bash, which is an indie show out of Chicago. Which was basically the first show I'd ever shown anything at that was like not a home show, like, which was pretty cool. Well, I did a PAX a couple years ago with like a narrative game, but it was the first show I'd done basically by myself. Um, was like a Bit Bash, and then I was like, oh, cool! I'll just like submit to a couple of other shows, and I'll see if they're interested. And basically, everywhere said yes, so I just took it everywhere. So it's been to let's see, because basically I have no filter. If you'll cover any cost at all, I'm there.
Why
And
not
like
take the trip?
yeah, and like especially like if it's within, and I'm a Midwesterner, so I have a very rough definition of the word of like the words driving distance. So like
I'm from Minnesota, so I feel you on that.
so like for example, I got accepted to a show in Wisconsin. Yeah, Madison, Wisconsin in February. And they were like, "Oh, are you sure?" And I was like, "Yeah, that seems fine." And so I drove to Madison, Wisconsin in February. And it was,
That's a hike in February.
yeah, and I didn't realize that until I got there, and there were people like fishing on the ice. I didn't know people did that.
Yeah, they do that up here.
I didn't know. And so like that was a show, so I did that one, and then let's see, I drove to Toronto for Hand Eye Society. Obviously I've done MagFest a couple of years. Uh, one year I wanted to take it to GDC, but I didn't really get accepted into any shows necessarily. But I wanted to take it to GDC, so I built the travel version of the board, and I was going on Train Jam, so I built a giant backpack for it and a travel board, and I took it on the train. We actually made games on the Train Jam for it, which was great. And there's some really cool pictures I have of it on Train Jam of just like the incredible scenery of like Western United States in the train windows, and then like my bright pink board like on a table. And when I got there, I would basically guerrilla set it up anywhere. Like I would go to shows, like there was like a I think a Devolver Digital show, and I just like set it up on the floor. Like if you had a TV or like a laptop, I know I had a laptop. If you had a laptop, I would just like plug in. And so I did that a couple different places, and then I got accepted into Out of Index, which was in South Korea, and I got accepted into Feral Vector, which is a show out of uh, England, a place called Hebden Bridge, which is I think outside of Manchester. And then Pixel Pop. Oh God, I've been so many places. Oh, at Smithsonian. I showed at the Smithsonian in 2019. So yeah, I mean, basically, if you like, I had to start. I didn't quite. I think I. Yeah, I mean, I think I've semi-retired it. I say, but if someone asked, I'd probably take it out again. Like I decided that once Wonderville like made the arcade version of it, that I was kind of retiring, like traveling with it, because I love it, but also like the original IKEA version, like it's IKEA tables aren't really designed to be taken apart, and I have to disassemble the table every time I take it somewhere. Like I had to take the legs off, and so it's starting to get really wobbly, and so it really can't be taken apart and many more times. Like I'm starting to strip the screws.
Well, it sounds like to me you need to make a new board for traveling.
Well, I have another board for traveling. I have the travel board, but it just doesn't have the same impact.
Right. So let's see. Of those conventions that you've gone to, I mean, you already said that you've gone all over the world.
Yeah.
Which one? I know it's gonna be a hard question to answer because I struggle even with the ones that I've gone to. Which one was your favorite, and for what reason?
Oh man. I feel like the answer always has to be Out of Index, which was the show in South Korea, and it's mostly just because it was one of my first. I can't remember if it was my first international show because I can't remember timeline wise if Hand Eye Society was right before or right after. Um, 2018 was a weird year because I basically did like 14 or 16 shows that year, and like one
It's a
month
lot of traveling.
I did like I did like Korea, then West Virginia, then I did like 3 shows in 2 weeks, uh, including Korea. And in the case of Korea specifically, they gave me 1 month notice for that show, uh, and so I didn't have time to ask off for work. So I left Kentucky on Thursday night, flew in, basically arrived there like Friday evening, their time, stayed, like did the show, left Sunday midday their time, arrived here at 5 a.m. and then went to work because we had a launch for a project that Monday. So like it was a little bit stressful, but the show itself was really amazing because they were really chill, they were really cool. Um, they told me I was going to do a talk, but they were kind of overstating it. What they meant was they just took me in front of the room and complimented me for 20 minutes. And then which is what the translator told me they were going to do, like right as I was going up. She goes, "It's not a talk. They're just going to tell you why they picked you your game, which means they're just going to compliment you for 20 minutes." And I was like, "Oh, okay." Which is what they did. Everyone was really happy to play the game, and they also they had partnered with an architecture studio, and so the architecture firm had basically built my game a like a surrounding area. Like, it's hard to describe, but they had basically built it like its own like display.
So they built you like a booth kind of thing.
They it kind of, but like it was really unique to it. Like it perfectly suited it. Like it was the right size to hold the travel board perfectly. Like it was just the right size because they asked me for the dimensions beforehand. So it was perfectly shaped for it, like so it wouldn't slip off. And then like it was framed so that in all the pictures it looks really great because it's designed exactly for the dimensions. And so there's a projector behind it and everything looks really good. It's some of the best pictures I have of my board are from that show, just because of how well it did. And also just like I don't know, they did really well about like I got to talk to like international press, which I haven't done any other time. And it was just really cool. And I don't know, I got to talk to a random like teachers, like a bunch of like English teachers. I don't know why, but that was another weird thing. But it was a really good show. Like I love all the shows I go to, but that one sticks with me a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it must have been such a unique experience. I mean, being in, I don't know if you've been to Korea. I haven't, so
That was the first time I'd been to Korea. I've been to Japan before, but that was the first time I'd been to Korea. I would definitely go back to Out of Index, but yeah, that was and Korea in general.
so with you having gone to the Korea convention, we now know it's one of your favorites. What were some of the biggest differences you noticed between international conventions and American conventions?
I mean, the ones I've been to internationally. So I obviously haven't been to any of the really big ones, but all the smaller conferences I've gone to, all the international conferences I've gone to, are all really um, small and like really tight knit and really like focused on like these like communities and like more of like the artistic, like kind of the artistic merit. And that might just be the ones I'm going to be totally fair. But like all the shows I go to in the US are very focused on you've made this thing, how are you going to sell it? Like no one at Feral Vector or Out of Index asked me where I was going to sell my game, which is first of all a patently ridiculous question. It is 100 buttons. Um,
Not exactly a sought after game.
you have no idea how many times people have asked me that question. But nobody at an international show has ever asked me that question. Actually, I don't even think at the Hand Eye Society event, which was in Toronto, nobody has ever asked me that question at an international show. And that's probably because all of those shows are very art focused. Like their intention is look at these beautiful art things. Aren't they really artistic and interesting? Like, isn't this really cool? Like, isn't this lovely? And I don't know, it's just a very different kind of culture. I mean, Feral Vector was also like being, I don't know, at like a summer camp that wants to hug you. Like it Feral Vector has a very different vibe from literally any show I've been to. They had like live action role playing games where your mother's new boyfriend is Tom Selleck. Um,
Hmm.
and like you run around in the woods and it was a great show, but like you're definitely not going to get that at like a PAX or a
Right.
MagFest in the US. And I mean, I've been to small shows even in the US, like Pixel Pop or West Virginia Game Developers Expo or any other number of small shows, and they've never felt the way that an international show is felt in that regard.
That's really interesting that you bring that up as one of the biggest points you pulled out of the show was how are you going to sell this, as opposed to people not asking that, because going to the conventions that I've gone to with Galactic Battleground, that's almost always what you get asked is people are
Mhm.
wondering how you're gonna sell it. And I feel like a lot of the American shows are also showing off like redemption games and stuff like that. I mean, there's a handful that I've been to that aren't like that, but
Yeah.
we went to a big one in Vegas, and that's all it was. Is you could tell that the majority of the people that were there run businesses and they're looking for stuff to put in their business. So there was always
Yeah.
the question of how much is it? How am I going to get it there? And it just feels so buy, and people aren't really enjoying the game. So if it doesn't seem like it's going to make them money right away, they just walk by.
And I mean, I get that it's a business. And like, again, like I work in indie development, right? Like, so we have marketability. Like, I've done marketable projects. Like, I understand that. There is precisely nothing marketable about my game.
Sometimes you want to just do something for fun.
Yeah, and like it seems really obvious to me, like when you look at it. But I won't say his name, but I had a guy who runs a large fighting game convention come up to me and tell me that like I needed to consider monetization strategies for my game. And I was like, cool. What do you think those are? And he
Yeah,
couldn't,
just ask him.
yeah, because like, I mean, if he's got some, I'd love to hear it. He had none. He just wanted to tell me that I was wrong. Because that's the thing. Like, they just they just want you to like have. I never had so many people concerned about my economic welfare until I started making art games.
So I'm curious to jump back into
Yes.
Centenntable. What was your favorite thing about the project? Like, what really, looking back on it, what are you really, really proud about doing with it?
Mostly working with other people, honestly. Like, it's something that gets frequently, like, overlooked in the project. A lot of people think that it's a thing I made on my own because in a lot of respects, it is, a project where I'm it's my big dumb button baby. Like, I am seen as the person who made it, and physically, in a lot of ways, I did. Like, blood, sweat, tears. I lit the thing on fire once. Um, all that. But the I really appreciate that the project allowed me to sort of build this community of things. Like, so the studio that I work for, Supercell, actually built the game that's on it. Um, when I was in Hawaii, like I was on vacation. Like I told them what game. Like, we talked about the game beforehand. Like, we talked about the design, everything. We had discussed it, and when I came back, I did changes to it and stuff. But like, I didn't like the game is something that was made mostly by the studio that I work for. So like that wouldn't exist without them. Or like my partner helped me with a lot of like late nights and like building it, but also like I have friends who have now traveled across the country with me to show this. Like I had a couple of friends go with me to Canada to show this. Like, sat in a car with me for 12 hours. My mom actually went with me to Korea so that she could help show the game with me in Korea. And that's really cool to me. It's just mostly that sort of weird community. Like, I definitely wouldn't have met the Death by Audio guys if I hadn't have made this game, right? Because like before this, I was making like narrative games about oppression, which I still am, but like um, those don't really get you into like fun, exciting shows. Nobody wants to play your narrative game about oppression at Magfest. Nobody puts
Right.
that
Yeah.
into an
It just gave
arcade
you
cabinet.
a new avenue to show your art.
Yeah,
And that's cool that you had so many people come with you, and your mom got to go to South Korea. So it's like you
yeah,
built something and you got to bring these other people on the journey along with you, and that community and that team is such a big thing. That's what I love about the community that I've found through the indie games, as well as the guys that I work with.
Yeah. So it's like the community that I built, and also the community that I built like around the actual project, and also the community of people that I've like met through the project. Like, because legitimately when I started this, I had basically zero arcade building knowledge at all. Like, I did not know what wire crimping was until 2018, which is alarming because I built the first board in 2016. And so it explains why there were so many fail rates beforehand, because I was just kind of not crimping them properly. Uh, because nobody had told me. I was
Right, you're just
guessing.
learning as you go.
Yeah, and like one of the guys in the alternative control scene was talking to me at a show, and he's like, "What do you mean?" Like, like, and I was like, "Well, nobody told me." And so he like sat me down and like showed me like what to buy and like how to properly use it, which is like great, but like, yeah, that's my fail rates went down way more after that.
That's good. You got help from the community, and they taught you how to do everything and helped you improve on your project.
Yeah, I mean, you're never going to be amazing at first blush. And like my degree is in English literature. Like I do not have a background in this.
Yeah, you just decided to try it out and give it a go.
Yeah,
So before we wrap everything up, I want you to shout out any social media that they can check the game out or play the game. I believe I found a site where you can play it,
you can.
as well as any shout outs to anybody that has helped you out along the way.
Oh, that's a lot of people. Okay, so the best place to find me is at Barely Concealed on Twitter. It's just the easiest way to find me. My primary website is amandathrows.rocks. The website for the board is buttonsr.cool. If you are checking out the amandathrows.rocks website, there should be an itch.io.link, which will take you, there's like a Centenntable thing there. You can download it. If you have 4 USB keyboards, you can play it. You will need 4 USB keyboards uh, to play the whole thing. I don't know 100% if that they showed it in Colorado, so it should work. Let's see what else. People have helped me. Jetpack Fandango on Twitter, who is my partner, and then Super Soul Studio, which is the studio I work for, on Twitter. Were also super helpful. And then, of course, if you check out the Death by Audio guys or Wonderville, who are also super rad. I think that's
Awesome.
everyone.
Yeah, well, I'll throw all those links down in the description so
Thank
that
you.
anybody that is interested can find them. Um, and I just wanted to thank you again for coming on here, Amanda, and
Of
chatting
course.
about this game. And we will be back next Friday with another episode. If you guys like what we're doing here at Indie Arcade Wave, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, the like button, leave us a comment, share everything with your friends. And until next time, peace.